There are many swords in One Piece, but the ones that are named stand above all. Yet even amongst them, there are graded weapons which go from Wazumono, Ryo Wazumono, Owazumono, and finally the Saijo Wazumono. They are the rarest of them all. However, Oda has just revealed a new hidden level to swords in One Piece where the strongest of them all manifest themselves in reality through the user's haki. We've already seen Zoro do this with his Sandai Kitetsu and Ashura form, but recently in the anime we have got to see even Shanks' Griffin, so I'm going to go over and rank each of the named Meito class blades in all of One Piece. Starting off with the sword of one of the strongest pirates in history, Gold D. Roger, and his cutlass, Ace. It is one of the 12 supreme grade or Saijo Owazumono swords in the world. These supreme blades are said to be on a tier of their own, where not even Zoro's Enma, soaked in Oden's haki for decades, has managed to reach this level. And with the enemies Roger had to fight with it in hand, it sure as hell needs to be built different. As one of Roger's day one rivals was of course Garp the Fist, where this sword had to have tanked multiple nuclear level galaxy impacts throughout both of their careers. But the biggest feat we've seen Ace accomplish is Roger's clash against Whitebeard, another wielder of a supreme grade whose attacks are fueled by one of the strongest devil fruits. Yet Roger and Ace went equal against it and split the sky. But an even crazier attack that is achieved through Ace is the Kamusari or Divine Departure, which with one strike defeated Wano's strongest samurai, Kozuki Oden, who was stronger than even Kaido and wielded two other top class blades. Plus, let's not forget the countless battles Ace helped Roger win against Rocksteady Zebek and his crew, so we have to put Ace at S tier. However, a blade that might surmount even the accolades of Ace by the end of One Piece is the Wado Ichimonji. It was a great grade Owazumono katana forged by Shimotsuki Kozuboro, a legendary swordsmith from Wano whose blades are known throughout the world. Kozuboro would pass the sword down to his son Koshiro, who would hand it off to his own daughter Kuina, or the girl Zoro couldn't beat for 2,000 battles. However, we all know the story, right? Mr. Down these stairs came to pay a visit to our girl and she died, leaving her sword in the hands of Zoro, who cherished Wado Ichimonji as if it represented his lost friend and their promise to become the strongest swordsman. And in One Piece, this kind of a bond towards an object always yields a lot of strength, as it is exactly this relationship between a swordsman and a sword that gives wills to these blades or strengthens their haki, resulting in more devastating attacks and the sword itself leveling up, which we have witnessed with Zoro's Wado Ichimonji, especially during his fight against King, where Zoro's other swords dropped to the ground, but Wado was there to back up our boy, leading him to eventually defeat his strongest 1v1 opponent yet. However, currently, I would say that Wado is actually Zoro's weakest sword. I mean, it sure has the potential where by the end of the series, it will get to a level which will far surpass his other swords, as I have discussed in our other videos, in which I even explain how it might be able to slice space-time itself. But right now, it ain't all that. As Zoro sliced Kaido with Enma, he was using Susu as his strongest blade since Thriller Bark, and even his Kitetsu is the reason for Ashura. So I'm going to give Wado Ichimonji B tier for the moment. Next, we go from one of the swords with the most potential to Kuros Cat Claws, which are blades fastened to the tips of each of his fingers, which the captain uses in combination with his blinding speed to become one of the most infamous pirates in the East Blue. These are our first swords which we do not know the grade of. However, simply based on the fact that there are 10 blades required for this, and Kuro isn't particularly powerful or a wealthy character, so it is very plausible that these are not even graded weapons. That said, while their quality might be lacking, their infamy and uniqueness earned them a name at the very least. Cause bro, this is the sword of the smartest, second smartest, Ben Beckman, the sword of the second smartest man in the East Blue. Put some goddamn respect on him by giving it trash tier. Staying in East Blue, we have Yosaku and Johnny's swords. Yeah, I forgot about these guys too, but their sword does have a cool name called the Nakiri blades. These are wielded by people who specially work in bounty hunting, so you can be sure they're at least of some quality. However, these are absolutely bottom of the barrel as far as the swords we were looking at today. So much so that they aren't even really swords. They're just oversized kitchen knives used for cutting vegetables. Bro, who let these guys on the list? Take them straight to the trash here, please. Okay, let's move away from the trash can and look at Arlong's Kiribachi, which has a sick shark tooth-like design, meaning it's custom made and it is powerful enough to tear through a building with ease. Even if you factor in Arlong's raw strength playing a part in that, the sword being able to tank all Arlong could throw at it is legit a testament to its dexterity, especially considering that Arlong has had the blade alongside him since his days in the Sun Pirates over a decade ago. However, something that does bring it down is the fact that pre-time skip, pre-gears, basic East Blue Luffy was able to crush the blades with one hand. So with that, I can't put it higher than D tier. On the other hand, Tashigi's Shigure is a graded katana which was strong enough to deflect Zoro's Wado Ichimonji, a blade that is 2 whole grades higher than itself. It even deflected a cannonball and Monet, who's an officer from Dofi's crew. Plus, with Tashigi being a sword nerd and collector, of course the sword she wields would be fierce, right? However, the fact that it is a graded sword, which are said to be rare, but there aren't a limited number of them, we have to put it at D tier. We just don't have enough feats, man. That's kind of the case with a lot of these swords. Like, they just don't have enough feats, so we have to extrapolate through like how much of a menace the character who's wielding it is. But Tashigi has other swords in her collection too, like the one she collected from Mr. 11 of Baroque Works, which is a grade higher than Shigure at Rio Wumo, of which there are only 50 known in the whole world. Sadly, not much is known about this one in particular, other than the fact that Tashigi beat Mr. 11 and took the sword after, but with it being a higher grade, we gotta put it still in D tier, but above Shigure. Finally, in the One Piece novel, Tashigi takes another Rio Wumo sword called Yamama Oroshi from a pirate named Billy the Orca Killer, who was known for slicing a goddamn whale with this sword, and its size was large enough for a bear to wield it. With that, I would give Yamama Oroshi the highest rank out of Tashigi's swords. Still D tier, but higher than all the others. But the man whose sword Tashigi desperately wants to see is of course Zoro, whom she saved from getting scammed in Logtown while buying the next sword, Yubashiri. This was supposedly an heirloom that was passed down in Ippomatsu's family and the best sword in his shop. But while it stayed with Zoro for quite some time, it was ultimately destroyed by Shu's rust fruit at the end of Eni's lobby. As pathetic as that sounds, Yubashiri was still one of the 50 Rio Wumo blades, and Zoro was using it to split the ocean, defeat 100 Baroque work agents, and even survived against a literal blade human at Alabasta. So Yubashiri slots in at C tier. The next two swords belong to Dory and Brogi, the captains of the giant pirates who were a top-class crew over 100 years ago. They are the Terry sword of Dory and Bruiser axe of Brogi. Just from the fact that these blades have survived 100 years of constant battle day after day between the two giants just goes to show how OP they are. And they are wielded by pirates whose bounties amount to 100 million. Now, if these blades made it to Egghead, where the giants are fighting the Gorosei, I think I would have easily given them A tier, but sadly, they got broken at the end of Little Garden when the two destroyed the Island Eater with their hockey blast. So I'm going to give them both low B tier. But the next weapon is one of the more interesting ones, Enel's Nonosama bow, which isn't forged like most of the other ones on this list. Nonosama is a staff which can be transformed into a trident or a poleaxe through Enel's Gorogoro no Mi's electricity. But with Enel not really being a swordsman who relies on his blade, it's hard to believe its strength can top actual swords that have been seeing constant battles and are soaked in hockey, so I don't think I can give it higher than C. It does look cool as hell though. Another sword that relies on devil fruit power is Bassil Hawkins' unknown grade Meito Warabide. This is a long sword made of straw through Hawkins' devil fruit. Like Enel's staff, this is not a traditionally made sword, so it would likely be an ungraded Meito. Of course, that doesn't mean the Warabide is weak at all, as the straw fruit allows Hawkins to extend and manipulate it in any way he sees fit, making this weapon extremely versatile and effective at both long and short range combat. But come on, at the end of the day, it's straw. Any competent blade user could slice through it if not imbued with hockey. And without Hawkins' fruit buff, it's pretty much just a normal sword, so I'm gonna have to put it in C tier because the hilt does look a bit fancy and it's wielded by a supernova. Just like Dory and Brogi killed Sea Kings with their blades, our next sword is a Vice Admiral T-Bone's bamboo, which is strong enough to slice giant ships in half as revealed through T-Bone's epithet of ship cutter. We also see bamboo slice Sea Kings, and with it being wielded by a Vice Admiral, I think it's definitely a graded weapon. But the fact that bro got yeeted by pre-time skip Zoro, no Ashura by the way, I don't think I could give bamboo higher than a C tier. Also, I understand that the sword is only as strong as the master, as we see Mihawk make minced meat out of Zoro's Wado Ichimonji with a goddamn knife. But imagine giving Yosaku's blade to time skip Zoro. Just the pressure of his attacks and those 120, 360 pound strikes would make most swords crumble, let alone slicing whole galleons in half. A prime example of this is Spandam's Funkfree. This is a special sword that is actually the first living weapon we see in One Piece. Funkfree was originally a cutlass which was fed the elephant fruit by Vegapunk, giving it the ability to transform, which makes for incredibly heavy strikes from the sword. While this would be a very powerful tool in anyone else's hands, unfortunately, Spandam ain't doing any of that. Funkfree has an unknown grade, but it is a Meito. However, it does lead us to question, does the sword or the elephant have a name? It all comes down to whether or not Vegapunk would waste a devil fruit on a normal sword, or if you'd want to place it into a graded weapon, as this definitely took some experimentation and would be impractical to risk high grade blades, so I think he probably stuck with normal swords. But our current knowledge of how graded weapons start to form their own wills, though that might put a wrench in that theory, because it's possible that to give an object a devil fruit, it needs to have a will present already, just like how a human or animal which have wills get devil fruit powers. Whatever it is, Funkfree ain't getting more than trash tier. Moving on from Spandam, the character with least aura, to the man with the most, Whitebeard and his Murakumogiri, which is one of the 12 supreme grades that he wielded for over 30 years. We all saw how much of a beast Enma became through Odin's hockey, so just imagine the levels this blade is at, as Whitebeard was clashing swords against Roger, Garp, Sengoku, even Commander-in-Chief Kong. The sword's name itself means cloud cutter, so every time bro moves with this thing through his hockey, the sky itself splits, just like we saw when Whitebeard first met Shanks. However, the real strength of Murakumogiri was shown during Marineford, where it tanked hits from the strongest Admiral Akainu, not even melting at the scorching heat this lava was producing. Like, that shit goes like thousands of degrees Celsius, dude. Or what about that two-handed strike from Vice Admiral John Giant? It was still not phased, which shouldn't be much of a surprise, as it regularly was subjected to combining Whitebeard's Gura Gura no Mi's attacks for an even more devastating blow, so it's easily S tier. But a sword that not only has power but style too is Brooks's Soul Solid Cane Sword, which is a weapon bro has carried for 50 years since his time both on the Rumbar Pirates and as the leader of a kingdom's battle convoy. That said, while the sword was forged well enough to survive over half a century of use, it wasn't until after it was sharpened by the Long Arm tribe during the time skip that Brook seemed to give the weapon a name. I'd say that Soul Solid is definitely a graded Meito by this point, as it was clashing against Zombie Ryuma and his Susui during Thriller Bark. But of course, Brook kept losing, yet this sword didn't break. So I'm going to give it B rank. Speaking of Shushui, it is a legendary black sword, but it's not a supreme grade, only coming in at great, of which there are 21 of them in the world. But the fact that it is a black blade puts it even above a supreme grade in terms of strength, as it's said that even if a dinosaur stepped on it, it wouldn't bend a millimeter. Plus, Ryuma used it to slay a goddamn dragon with little effort with this boy on hand. Zoro is even worried before the raid in Onigashima that without Susui and its durability by his side, surmounting Kaido would be a tough task, making it the strongest sword in his arsenal, where I have to give it a new special rank of black, as these blades go above everything else by default. But Susui quickly gets replaced by Enma for Zoro. Fear not though, because Hiyori in chapter 953 says that Enma, which is not even a black blade, is a worthy replacement for Susui, which has to do with its creator, the legendary Shimotsuki Kozaburo, who crafted this great blade for Kozuki Oden, the only man the sword deemed worthy enough to wield it, as it kept siphoning the user's haki. It's like, I want Hiyori to do that to me, you feel me? Yo, cut that. Don't put that. This is a unique quality of higher tier swords, which have been seeped in haki and start to gain their own wills, where at their final tier, they even start to manifest themselves for the user, sort of like a Bankai release. We saw Enma do this when it appeared as a Grim Reaper in front of Zoro after his battle against King. And by the end of the series, I'm confident Zoro will be able to utilize the King of Hell power that will manifest into King Yama, just like how his Kitetsu gives him the 9 sword style Ashur. But I will get into that in just a bit. But Enma definitely deserves to be up there at S tier with just as pure aura. And the fact that it was going toe to toe against S tier blades like Ace back in Odin's day, easy S tier. Next, we have Zoro's rival Killer's blades, the Punishers. These are sickles mounted on axles which rotate in Killer's hands, allowing him to drill through whatever is in front of him. The Punishers actually spin so fast that they create shockwaves at the speed of sound, which inflict internal damage to opponents. They even withstood Shanks' Griffin attack as Killer jumped in to tank a bit of the damage for Kid. The Punisher's grade are unknown, however, I think the more important thing is the machinery rather than the blades themselves here. And as it's unlikely Killer has attained 2 high-grade blades, because these are the bum-ass Kid Pirates. We can't be expecting much, alright? So I'm gonna give these, man, it's like, I'm debating between D tier or C tier. Actually, low C tier, because it is like a New World Pirates weapon, you know? Alright, let's give it C tier. Sticking with the supernovas, we have Law's Kikoku Heaven's Howl, which is not a graded sword, but look at the name, bro. The name itself has aura, because it is a cursed blade. It's possible we just don't know the grade of it, and if I had to guess, I'd put it on the skillful grade tier, or even like great tier, just from the name alone. Also, from the fact that it is cursed, we know it has a will already present inside of it, which is a rare feat on its own. But Kikoku is most effective when Law uses it in tandem with his Ape Ape no Mi, where we have seen this sword block Doflamingo strings, cut literal mountains and meteors, but its biggest feat was damaging Big Mom. So I would instantly put this on A tier. Next up, we have a weird situation. Meito specifically refers to blades with names, but in the case of Really's sword, we only know that it does have a name, not what that name is. That said, we've also seen Reallyy use multiple swords. When he fought against Kizaru on Sabaody, he used a double-edged straight sword, but in more recent appearances, we've seen him use what looks more like a katana. So as is tradition when it comes to Reallyy, we are kind of left in the dark. He is the Dark King. So I don't think I can give it a rank, but from everything we know about this man, probably being the strongest swordsman of his era, his blade has to have been legendary, and with his epithet of Dark King, his blade has a high chance of being a black blade too. That's just speculation though. Balls deep speculation. Probably true, you know, prediction hockey. And if it is true, you guys should go buy some gamer subs, because man, gamer subs is the only thing carrying me right now to voice this 6,500 word video all in one go. This shit tiring, bro. Go get some gamer subs, code ABD, 10% off, please. Like Reallyy, Vista is yet another talented swordsman with Meito blades that we don't know the names of. Vista is so skilled at dual wielding that even Mihawk acknowledges his abilities, which to some degree he has been able to verify by deflecting Mihawk's flying slash. While in most cases, I would say that people using multiple blades wouldn't have upper grade swords when it comes to Vista, though I'm making an exception, as he is the 5th division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates and it's known as the greatest swordsman in the entire crew. If there is anyone who could have the money for 2 skillful grades or even higher tier swords to facilitate dual wielding, it would be this guy. And man had enough aura to claim he could best Mihawk with these things, so I'm going to put bro's swords at A tier. Someone we won't have to speculate on though is Rayu Shiru's sword, which is an unknown grade that the former jailer of Impel Down uses as quick and efficiently as possible, never wasting a single motion when trying to cut down his enemies. This sword even managed to injure both the Whitebeard and Garp. Simply based on that feat and who this blade belongs to, probably Zoro's endgame opponent, Rayu definitely deserves A tier. Like, it's gonna have to contend to like a full potential Wado Ichimonji in the end. This sword could even reach S tier by the end. Another sword from the depths of Impel Down was Hanibals Koui. It is a long-ranged weapon that allows Hannibal to keep his distance from any inmates while he tries to control them. Adding on to this idea of creating distance, Hannibal is able to light Koui on fire as he swings it to imitate fire dancing. If a sword on a stick doesn't make inmates keep their distance, the fire certainly will. If I thought Rayu was given to Warden Shiryu to guard Impel Down, it makes sense that the Vice Warden be given a slightly less special blade, probably a skilled grade. But considering how useless Hannibal is, I can't give this sword higher than C tier. The next sword is the Franken, used by General Frankie. This is a massive blade meant for the giant robot to use. However, it likely falls into the Meito category because it is a named invention rather than a named sword. Not to mention, this was created after we got the numbers for each grade. Now, it was made by Frankie, so it is definitely high quality, but even so, I don't believe this to be a graded blade. And since it falls into more the machinery category, plus we haven't seen as many feats, so I'm gonna drop it to D tier. It's like, come on, I can't use that sword. Do you see how big that sword is?
That's what she said.
But a blade that won't be down in the bottom is Big Mom's Napoleon. This, along with Hera, Prometheus, and Zeus, are one of Big Mom's main weapons. Napoleon was given a fragment of Big Mom's soul to become a homie, which typically takes the form of a bichrome hat, but it can transform to become a real sword as well. Because of this transformation ability, we have seen Napoleon take shape as a longsword, a cutlass, even a gladius. Napoleon is yet another unknown grade blade, but considering it's Big Mom wielding it, and she has had it for decades, withstanding countless top tier battles, I'm going to put it at A tier. Now, we move from top of the verse to the bottom with Hod Jones and his Kirasame, which is a curved sword that can be placed over his dorsal fin to slice opponents as he swims by them. Don't let his negative aura affect the sword rating, because he has even cut through an underwater mountain with this sword with no scratches. But because it is still an unknown grade and its owner is Hod freaking Jones, I'm going to give it top of D rank. On the middle of D rank. It's kind of a trash. Next up, we have Zoro's Sandai Kitetsu, one of my favorite swords. Interestingly though, along with Tashigi's Shigure, this is the only other graded blade we know of that isn't confirmed to be in the skillful, great, or supreme grade tiers. On the other hand, this is our first cursed blade in the series who kill their users if they don't accept them. Despite this, Zoro overcame the Kitetsu sword by putting his arm on the line at Logtown. Kitetsu has been Zoro's trusty sword since then, where it helped him surmount Mr. One, Enel's priest, and most importantly, during Eni's lobby, Kitetsu finally showed its true colors by becoming one with Zoro and manifesting into the Ashura 9 sword style attack. This video is already like 30 minutes plus, so I'm not gonna go deep into that kind of theories, but if you guys are interested, then watch Zoro's true power video I made a while ago. Anyways, Kitetsu has been with Zoro ever since, and it was pivotal in defeating King during Wano and Pika in Dressrosa, so I have to give it A tier. Speaking of Wano, we have Kinemon and his dual katana, Sakusan and Kakusan. Kinemon makes use of these swords alongside his Foxfire style to overwhelm his opponents in battle. These swords are both confirmed to be upgraded, despite Kinemon being one of Odin's red scabbards. However, when it comes to dexterity, they are second to none, as Kinemon regularly is slicing fire with them, and they even survived a battle against Kaido. So with them being made in Wano, which is renowned for their craftsmanship, I'm going to put these swords in B tier. Kinemon's BFF Kanjuro's Sui Shibai is also an unranked Meito. While he wields it like a katana, this weapon is actually a brush that he uses to draw with and block a few strikes. But on a 1v1 with any real swords, I think it would have a bit of a trouble. But would it lose against cat claws and kitchen knives? Nah, it'd win. So I'm gonna give Sui Shibai the C. Actually, nah, put it in D tier. Put it in D tier. Which makes me think about Dressrosa, where we come across the new Admiral Fuji Tor. He's a blind swordsman. Okay, I should not have tried to voice this all in one go, guys. I'm getting kind of tired. Go check out the Patreon. Fuji Tor is a blind swordsman who wields the Yakuza Kasen, one of the 12 supreme grade blades. The Yakuza Kasen was forged by Fugetsu Kishaburo, who's from Wano, and it eventually found its way to Isho. Like Soul Solid, this sword is a Shikomizue, a cane sword. But rather than being used for fencing, Fujitora uses a reverse grip in tandem with his press fruit. Honestly, Fujitora's reverse grip with the Yakuza sword can yield some devastating strikes, where bro even put Zoro with his Susui and Kitetsu on the back foot. However, we haven't really seen the Admiral flex his muscles much yet, so I don't think I can give it S tier so soon. But considering how much aura Fujitora has by the end game, there is a chance it makes it up there. Moving on, Durandal is a rapier used by Cavendish. It is a Meito with an unknown grade that is said to be made of a very flexible iron so that it can withstand attacks which would crush other blades. For example, holding off Don Chinjao's headbutt with ease. This is the same headbutt that was used against Garp the Fist, alright? It is also named after one of the most iconic swords in our own world, and being crafted with such care and ingenuity in the story itself, I think it would be a safe place to assume that Durandal is a great grade sword tier, especially considering how devastating Cavendish's alter ego Hakuba is with those Mihawk-like eyes. This sword definitely is up there at the top of B tier. Next is Vice Admiral Bastil and his sword Sami Kiribocho. This is an unknown grade, but it is likely nothing special because it kind of got destroyed by Sabo the first time we saw it being used. Plus, these are New World Vice Admirals, guys. These motherfuckers are just fodder at this point, so I'm gonna give it a fat D tier. Actually, no, it's a Vice Admiral's blade. Let's give it C tier, C tier. However, Mihawk's Yoru couldn't be broken that easily, as it's a black blade. This is a massive sword which Mihawk uses with such skill that he can easily cut galleons, icebergs, or even meteors. Black blades are created through an immense amount of haki being flooded into the weapon over time with an experienced swordsman wielding them. These are extremely rare within the series and only really exist in the hands of top tier swordsmen. And in Yoru's case, it is wielded by the strongest of them all, which he likely earned after countless battles against other top tier swords and swordsmen, yet Yoru persists on the back of Mihawk. Of note though is that a sword having a black blade does not automatically make it a supreme grade weapon, and any sword could potentially become a black blade with enough time and experience in the hands of a master swordsman. However, a blade is more likely to actually survive long enough to become a black blade if it is of a higher quality, and Mihawk's is definitely supreme grade, which makes it the only black supreme on this list, meaning it's the strongest out of any other sword, putting it in black tier. It is the top of the top, peak tier. Although not a blade, Kaido's Hasaikai also makes the list, as it is a spiked club kanabo that is unranked. Honestly, it pushes the idea of what it means to be a blade, but it is still wielded by one of the strongest pirates of all time, where it has tanked and damaged countless top tier opponents with their own swords. But because the kanabo is ungraded and is mostly strengthened by Kaido's haki, I can't give it higher than A tier. Similarly, Yamato's Takeru is also a kanabo. This weapon currently does not have a known grade, however we do have a pretty good way to grade this ourselves. We know that Kaido's Hasaikai is confirmed to be an ungraded weapon, with Takeru effectively being a smaller copy of Hasaikai. And since the only way for Yamato to receive this was through her father's swordsmith, they are both probably the same tier, but with Yamato's being smaller and likely not as seeped in her haki due to her age being much lower, I'm going to put this at B tier. Next is Don Krieg and his battle spear Daisenso. This is created by attaching Don Krieg's golden shoulder plates to a spear. Despite Krieg's wealth and influence, it's likely that this is yet another blade that has not earned a grade. If it was a graded weapon, then Krieg probably wouldn't be attaching it to an exploding stick and wearing it down with each swing. Nor would Luffy have been able to break this blade in their fight. So I'm going to give it trash tier, bro. What were you expecting?
What, you wanted more?
On Whole Cake Island, we met Big Mom's kids, many of which were swordsmen. Firstly, we have Charlotte Amandi, wielded a Nodachi called Shirauo. This was an extremely long sword which we see cutting through wood while barely having any momentum and easily slicing through metal armor. This Meito has an unknown grade, but based on just how sharp this is and how masterfully forged it must have been, it is likely a great grade sword. But since Amande doesn't do a whole lot, I don't think I can give it higher than low C tier. Her brother Charlotte Cracker's longsword Pretzel is another Meito with no defined grade. It is a double-edged sword which is longer than Cracker's height and gives him incredible reach. When paired with his biscuit armor, it provides him a very powerful balance of offense and defense. This weapon is great, but Cracker is more likely to make duplicates with his devil fruit, which are just as sharp and powerful. Even so, Pretzel is likely a skillful grade sword. And since it is wielded by one of Big Mom's top officer, who went head to head with Gear 4 Luffy for 10 plus hours, I'm going to give it C tier. The last of Big Mom's swordsman children is Katakuri, who wields a trident called Mogura, which he makes the most of through his devil fruit. By spinning his arm or entire body, he's able to turn the trident into a drill, which could rip through his opponents. He can also extend his arms freely to elongate his reach, providing him with so much flexibility and safety to a weapon which already keeps enemies at bay until they are overwhelmed. Mogura's grade is undefined as of yet, but it belongs to the second strongest on a Yonko crew, and it is sharp enough to rip through buildings like butter. It could even be a supreme grade, honestly. It's Katakuri's blade. And alongside being steeped in Katakuri's haki for years, it definitely deserves A tier. Next up is another Vice Admiral. How many of these bozos are there, man? These guys are absolute... Wait, hold up. Yo. Pause. Kind of a baddie. This is Gion and her sword, Kanpira. Gion is such a masterful swordsman that she is considered to be a potential candidate for being an admiral in the future. Do you know how crazy this is? Every admiral we have ever seen has had some crazy devil fruit to justify their rank. And sure, Garp doesn't have one, but that's freaking Monkey D. Garp, alright? So her swordsmanship is nothing to laugh at. I can't even imagine her having a run-of-the-mill sword after considering all that. So I'm going to assume that Kanpira is at least a great grade sword. Yet, with us not really seeing any feats from Gion, like we just saw her standing around, to be honest. I don't think I can give it more than C tier at this point though. Moving on, we have another Kitetsu blade on the list, the Nidai Kitetsu, which is basically the big brother of Zoro's Sandai Kitetsu. As is true for all Kitetsu blades, this is considered to be cursed. However, while the Sandai Kitetsu is simply graded but not in the upper tiers, the Nidai is a great grade blade. Unfortunately though, the world never really got to appreciate this weapon as it never made it off of Wano. After being forged by the master smith Kotetsu, the Nidai would eventually find its way into Kozuki Sukiyaki's hands. But if we're putting Zoro's Sandai at A tier, we have to give Nidai the same treatment. But it's probably weaker than Zoro's as it has seen many more battles. It even like manifested itself, so it has to be higher than its big brother. The Nidai isn't Sukiyaki's only sword though, as not everyone is as excited to use a cursed blade as Zoro is. Sukiyaki's other blade is confirmed to be a Meito. However, we do not know the name or grade of this weapon, so I'm not gonna attempt to even rank it. Staying in Wano, we have Kawamatsu's katana, which has an unknown grade. This is the Soto Musho, a high quality sword which Kawamatsu takes advantage of with his immense strength. Kawamatsu, like Kinemon and Kanjuro, is another member of the Red Scabbards, and like the others we have talked about, it is likely that Kawamatsu's blade is ungraded, but he doesn't have as many feats as the other swords on the list, the biggest one being that the sword survived in battles against Kaido and his hard-ass scales, so I can't give it higher than B tier. Meanwhile, Kawamatsu's daimyo Oden's other sword was the Ame no Habakiri. This is yet another great grade katana, and together with Enma, it was used to actually injure Kaido. This blade was crafted by Oden's father Sukiyaki and carried by Oden until he was ultimately boiled alive. After his passing, this blade was passed down to his son Momonosuke. But with how strong we have seen Enma be through it being imbued with Oden's haki all those years, Ame no Habakiri is likely on the same caliber, so I'm confident in giving it S tier. In Elbaf though, there lurks a sword which is straight up built different, named Griffin. The sword of rat-haired Shanks, one of the strongest swordsmen in all of One Piece. We've seen this sword clash with Whitebeard, stop Akainu's magma fist from killing Kobe, and most impressive of all, it allowed Shanks to one-shot useless Captain Mid. And while destroying this bozo, we got to witness its true form manifesting, just like we see with Enma or Sandai Kitetsu, where it takes the form of a griffin, bursting with energy, dispelling Kid's strongest attack that even managed to defeat Big Mom, another Yonko. Right, Shanks being a world-class swordsman and a Yonko, Griffin's grade is unknown. If I had to place it though, it is likely that Griffin falls into the supreme grade, or at the very worst, it is a great grade katana. It just won't make sense for Shanks, Mihawk's day one rival, Roger's star pupil, heir to the Figurelands, and most likely the strongest living Yonko to have a mid-ass sword. So it easily slots in at S tier, but I don't think it reaches above Roger or Mihawk. It's not just in the main story we have Meito swords though, as in the movie Strong World, as well as in Chapter 0 of One Piece, which is canon by the way, Shiki the Golden Lion has two Meito blades for legs, those being Oto and Kogarashi. These were blades belonging to someone considered to be one of Roger's greatest rivals, so his swords would be at least great grade, having withstood divine departures. But since we haven't seen much action from Shiki, I'm gonna put them at low A tier. And finally, our last blade is the Shodai Kitetsu, the perfect form which inspired the Sandai and Nidai, as well as the blade which earned the entire lineage of swordsmiths the title of Curse. In chapter 1117, it was more or less confirmed this supreme grade katana belongs to Samurai Gandhi himself, Ethan Baron Venusshiro. Like the other Shodai, it possesses a similar hilt and cursed pattern on the blade. The Shodai Kitetsu has been Venushiro's blade since the Void Century and flooding haki into it this entire time, making it the perfect black blade. Coupled with this tyrant's transformed state being a skeletal centaur that swoops down on enemies and brings their demise, you can easily start to see how the idea of a sword which brings death comes from. Easily S tier. Crap, I finished the recording. The raw file for the recording is 58 minutes long, so thank you for watching this entire video, y'all. This took a lot of effort. I hope Shueisha doesn't terminate the channel so y'all won't even be able to watch this video, and if you you guys want to help out bringing all these long as hour-long videos every week, high quality, then check out our Patreon. I am so tired right now. We do behind the scenes, like Harrison and Adil, they made a whole behind the scenes video talking about how they scripted the Black Clover video. I'm gonna be doing those. I just cosplayed Luffy at Anime Matsuri, so you guys can check that out on the Patreon too. So yeah, thank you so much. Watch this other banger video on screen right now. Goodbye.